In this video, we're going to find out what happens to the reduced electron carriers like NADH and FADH2 at the end of the citric acid cycle. So far in aerobic cellular respiration, we've seen a molecule of glucose become oxidized through glycolysis and the pyruvate oxidation step and the citric acid cycle. Along the way, we made some ATP. We made a lot of NADH and some FADH2. Now, how are we going to make lots of ATP? That's the final step, oxidative phosphorylation. And that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to introduce it in this video. So, let's move to our PowerPoint slide, and we'll get started. Okay, so we're looking at oxidative phosphorylation. This is a picture of my daughter. It's probably my favorite picture ever. I don't know how we captured her face, her expression so well, but she was about 4 then. This is hard. We're going to take a look at some introduction information and the function of the electron transport chain. Oh yes, here we are, back at this picture again. Now we're finally over here to oxidative phosphorylation. We've seen most of aerobic cellular respiration. We've seen glycolysis, where we started with one molecule of glucose, and that was partially oxidized to, 2 pyruvates, right? We followed those pyruvates through pyruvate oxidation and the citric acid cycle. Along the way, we made some ATP by substrate level phosphorylation, and we made lots of NADH and FADH2. Now we're ready to see what happens to those high energy electrons, how they're used to help the cell make loads of ATP. And this mechanism of making ATP is called oxidative phosphorylation. It uses the electron transport chain and something called chemiosmosis. So we have to figure out what the electron transport chain is and, what it is. So first of all, we have to be thinking, actually I'm going to flip back a slide. We have to be thinking about where we are. Right now, when we get to oxidative phosphorylations, we're inside a mitochondrion. In fact, we are in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion and in the matrix. So we have an inner membrane and an outer membrane. Well, most of the things that we're studying today are happening in the inner membrane. Okay, the matrix is in the middle of the mitochondrion. Okay. All right, so we're thinking about the inner membrane, this highly folded, convoluted membrane inside the mitochondrion. And what we see in that inner membrane are a series of molecules that we're going to call the electron transport chain. This is a weird picture. We'll see another picture in a second, but the electron transport chain are a set of membrane molecules, mostly proteins and some lipids, that sit in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. Okay. Now, these proteins and lipids are each kind of interesting because each of them possesses a small molecular group called a prosthetic group, actually, that has the ability to become reduced or oxidized to either gain electrons or donate electrons. In other words, each member in this electron transport chain, each member of the group, has the ability to participate in redox reactions. They can pick up electrons and they can donate them. Pick up and donate. They can become reduced and they can become oxidized. Okay, and each member of this electron transport chain, members of this chain, are kind of organized into bigger clusters or bigger protein complexes. Our textbook calls these protein complexes Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they're big purple blobs because they're protein complexes. And some of the electron transport members are kind of a part of each of these bigger complexes that are sitting inside the membrane inside the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. So what you can see in this drawing, and this is a really strange picture because it's just kind of a graph of free energy. Remember that from chapter 8, free energy. So things at the top have the most free energy, things at the bottom have the least free energy. And you can see that there's some of these molecules, they all have a designation here. There's flavin mononucleotide, an iron sulfur group. There's something called Q, that's ubiquinone. And then there are a lot of these cytochromes. Cytochrome B, iron sulfur, cytochrome C1, cytochrome C, cytochrome A, cytochrome A3. These are the members of the electron transport chain. And and you can see arrows between each of them. What those arrows are really representing are the movement of electrons as molecules pick up and donate electrons as they participate in redox reactions. So what you see in this picture are 2 electrons from, NADH, are donated to FMN. Those 2 electrons then are donated to the iron sulfur. And then they're donated to the next member in the chain, and they're donated to the next member by a redox reaction. Okay? Why are these molecules called a chain of molecules? Because they're organized in a particular sequence. They're organized in a sequence of increasing electronegativity. Increasing electronegativity. What did that mean again? Electronegativity is the affinity for electrons. If these molecules are organized in increasing electronegativity, in a sequence of increasing electronegativity, that means that the electrons can easily move via a redox reaction from one molecule to the next, 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 down this chain of electron transport molecules. Okay? That's really what happens. NADH, or FADH2, as you can see over here too, participates in donating electrons to a member of this electron transport chain via a redox reaction. And then those electrons, I'm going to use the word fall, to the next member of the chain, and then they are transferred to the next member, to the next member, to the next member. And if we look at the y-axis here, what we're seeing is as these electrons move from molecule to molecule to molecule, their free energy is dropping. They're becoming more stable. There's a fall or a drop in free energy. This is like chapter 8 material. There's a drop in free energy as these electrons fall down this electron transport chain. A drop in free energy means it's an exergonic reaction. Exergonic reactions are energy releasing. Okay, so what's happening here is our high energy electrons found in NADH and FADH2 are being donated to this electron transport chain, and then they're falling kind of in a slow way. They're falling through the electron transport chain. Eventually, where do they fall? Where do they end up? Let's see. Hey, way down here. They end up at oxygen. Oxygen becomes the final acceptor of electrons at the bottom end of this electron transport chain. So electrons are falling from NADH or FADH2 through this electron transfer chain and finally arriving at oxygen. Oxygen has a really strong pull for electrons, right? Oxygen then reacts with protons to make water. By the way, this is where oxygen is required for aerobic cellular respiration. We need it to be the final acceptor of electrons at the end of the electron transport chain, and water is produced as a byproduct. It's produced as a byproduct in our summary equation of aerobic cellular respiration too. So what's the function? Why on earth would this happen? High energy electrons flow through the electron transport chain, falling from molecule to molecule to molecule to molecule, and finally falling to oxygen. What's the point? The electron transport chain shuttles electrons down a series of redox reactions that releases energy. As these electrons fall down the electron transport chain, energy is released. And what do you think that energy is used to do? Make ATP somehow. Absolutely. So this fall of electrons is kind of considered a slow fall of electrons from NADH and FADH2 to oxygen. With the slow fall of electrons, our cells can tap into the energy that's released and use that energy somehow to make ATP. We just have to figure out how. Okay. I want to show you one more picture here so that we have an idea of where these electrons are sitting. Okay, so this is a picture from your textbook. What we're looking at here is the inner membrane of a mitochondrion. Okay, that's the membrane that's always curvy or convoluted, right? With folds called cristae. This out here would be the space between the membranes. And down here, this would be the matrix of the mitochondrion, all right? And the electron transport chain is housed in these molecules here. The ETC is what is the electron transport chain. So we've got these complexes of proteins called 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the electron transport chain molecules are in complexes 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Okay? There are a couple of electron transport chain molecules that actually aren't even in those complexes, but electrons are going to flow from NADH, okay, through the electron transport chain to oxygen, or from FADH2, which starts the chain at a little bit different location, into the electron transport chain, through the electron transport chain to oxygen. Okay, these molecules are sitting in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion, and there are lots of electron transport chains all over the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. And their job, again, is to take these high-energy electrons from NADH and FADH2. Remember, those came from glucose originally, and allow the electrons to fall slowly down to oxygen. When they fall down to oxygen through redox reactions, the energy that's released is going to be used to help make ATP. We just have to figure out how, and I'm going to draw that out on the whiteboard. Right? I think that's it for now. Take a look at the next videos. They're whiteboard videos, drawing out videos.